Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. I'm Tyler, and I'm here today with Jocelyn and Rhett to talk about the weather. So let's jump right into it. It's actually going to be a two-part episode, which we're really, really excited to do, and we're talking all things climate. So to start, the reason we really wanted to talk about this for not just one, but two episodes is that I've been experiencing a lot of extreme weather events lately. If you're in the DC area, if you know, we've had a crazy heat wave, we've had some crazy storms, and yesterday there was actually a tornado warning, which is pretty rare, and flash flooding and all of this crazy stuff. And I've been talking to friends and discussing these kind of extreme weather events and what's going on. And I've been hearing like a very common refrain from a lot of my progressive friends, which is like, oh, the world's going to end in 10 years. Why does this matter? The planet's going to boil over. And that actually is something called climate nihilism, which I've been really interested in and trying to learn more about. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what climate nihilism is, what it means for the progressive movement. And then in the next episode, we can talk a little bit more about some solutions to this defeatist attitude. So really quick, I'm going to define climate nihilism, and then Rhett, Jocelyn, I want to hear from either of you if you agree with this sentiment or if you know anyone who does. So climate nihilism is basically just the acceptance of the state of the world in the sense that nothing matters because, the climate is heating up, and the idea that it's kind of defeatist. So nothing can be changed. It doesn't matter. The world is ending. We've reached the tipping point. And that's a pretty extreme view. And I've heard friends say this in regards to getting married, having children, things like that. So Rhett, Jocelyn, do either of you feel or know anyone who has feelings of climate nihilism?
Yeah, 100%. And it's becoming so prevalent, I guess climate anxiety, and it sounds like climate nihilism is a more extreme version of that. But climate anxiety is so prevalent. 56% of people under 40 are reporting feeling it, to a degree that there's a whole field of psychology that's coming out, climate psychology, because look, it doesn't matter if your relationships are perfect or your job is perfect. If you feel quite convinced that human existence itself is going to end in 7 years or 5 or 10, the numbers are always around there. But it's never a good feeling, I can imagine.
And so I'm in my early 20s, everybody. And so I'm navigating these very adult things like a Roth IRA, like a 401k. And it's very hard for me to separate that conversation from the one about climate nihilism, when I'm like, is the earth going to exist when I turn 60 and I'm able to access these funds? Or that's just one example, but it's just of course it will, right? But I think that when we take away that nihilistic attitude, that's where we can actually make room for action. And I think that's a really important point, that it's the earth is so old, of course. Humans didn't start messing things up until fairly recently in global history of earth. So there is not really a point that we're past where it's too late for us to make any improvements into the things that we're doing. And that's why I get so excited when I see things about advancements in solar energy or wind energy, that kind of stuff, because of really there are actionable things that we can do to hopefully reverse kind of the track that humankind is on right now. So whenever I get into this nihilistic headspace, which does happen, I made this joke with Jocelyn and Tyler while we were prepping for this. I feel like it's a once a quarter thing that I have a big oh no about climate crisis. But once we work through that, it's okay. It's okay. And so I think that's where I am right now. But it's good for us to look at the positives sometimes, for sure.
Absolutely. I think so. It's a twofold problem, right? We are in a climate crisis, and there is evidence to show yeah, obviously we've had a huge impact on the state of the world. So the World Weather Attribution Initiative, WWA, scientists who work there found that climate change has drastically increased the likelihood of the heat waves that we've been seeing. So in Phoenix, it was 110. Here in DC, we had our first over 100 degree day in over nearly a decade. And it is true. And the IPCC report that came out earlier this year, I think in March, showed that, our planet has warmed to about 1.1 degrees Celsius above industrial levels. So like, hate to say it, but you have to be realistic. Like the planet is warming. That said, like Rhett was saying, that doesn't mean that, everything is over in 10 years or everything is over tomorrow. And, however, there are studies of people saying like, 39% of people surveyed say that they're like hesitant to have children due to climate change. 64% don't believe the government is telling the extent of the truth about climate change. You can see the ways that this anxiety, climate anxiety, as you call it, Jocelyn, is really, really impacting people. So when I think of looking at the positives, I think of the possibility to make change. So while we do have to face the kind of challenging realities about climate change and the fact that it is going on, there are ways that we can stick to the positive. And Rhett, I hear you have a very specific, very special way of keeping positive when it comes to all things climate. So what is it?
Yes. So there is this one website called euronews.green. And I don't know much about the website at all, but I do like this one kind of newsletter that they refresh pretty often on their site, which is, here are all the positive environmental stories from 2023 so far. And we'll link this in the show notes of this episode. And so like whenever I'm going through like one of these like, oh no, like fixating on the climate crisis kind of like headspaces, I like to pull this up just because the news that we consume about climate crisis is so horrific most of the time. And I think that like whenever there is just like a little increment to celebrate, like be it like the cause of like an effort to like preserve a species or like preserve like a section of wildlife, that kind of stuff, it deserves celebration, right? Because it shows that human action like can reverse some of the things that were also caused by human inaction. So just like a few examples from this page that were just like kind of relieving, I guess, to hear was like, here's one of them. France to end non-essential printing of paper receipts. Free food. Geneva's community pantries use a sharing economy to prevent food waste. And then another one that says humanity flourishes in community. Locals fix their broken items for free at this repair cafe. So just a lot of good stories about just like people coming together, like people making action either through policy, through community, that I think are so important. And I know we'll talk more about this in part 2 of the episode. Jocelyn just dropped in our little like show notes chat another one that's called nottoolateclimate.com. And Jocelyn, do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So Rebecca Solnit, who's been writing about hope and political hope for 20 years, started this website called Not Too Late. And she's sort of addressing this feeling of climate anxiety and nihilism and despair that we're all grappling with, which is, but and she also says, and this is one of my favorite quotes on the topic, that currently the powerful are pushing a form of despair that makes us passive. And I love that because, as we know, right, sometimes tragedy can be galvanizing. But I think what's so scary about the type of climate nihilism that Tyler brought up is it's like, it's a paralyzing type of anxiety. It makes us feel like, well, if there are only 3 years left, I mean, I want to write my novel and hang out with my friends. Why would I do any of this? That's stupid. And this website, and I think it's a book and podcast, is all about, hey, it's really not too late. There are tons of ways that we can push through to a far more beautiful future than the one we've had. And also learning from the various existential crises that humans tend to find themselves in. I mean, I think sometimes one of the most inspiring things about this period is history. When you look at periods of plagues that wiped out half of a population and wars that killed millions of people, people have overcome things that felt like the end of the world before. And I really believe we can do it again.
Yeah, Jocelyn, I think that's a really beautiful note. And like, as so much of this conversation is highlighted between the three of us, like there really is not much that can be weakened by a strong sense of community. Like a strong sense of organizing, a strong sense of fighting for the same cause are also central to keeping this fight going. And so when we all kind of band together and we like really kind of investigate what is possible, when we have political action, when we have activists that are like reshaping the future of like what things are possible, I think that's a really important note, that these things are totally within our control for us to really work towards a future that is more deserving of like all the great things that are going on right now. We need to have a future that is capable of having a fabulous Beyonce tour, a Taylor Swift Eras tour. Like, this is what we need. Like, can you imagine if we don't have a future where that stuff is all possible? I certainly could not. Um, you all, thank you so much for this conversation. I know right after this that we are going to be filming an episode as a follow-up on solutions and ideas and big picture stuff about the climate crisis. So be on the lookout for that. That'll drop a few days after this episode. But until then, do not fear. We put those resources in the chat. Check them out. Do some of your own research. Do some of your own kind of opinion forming. Let us know in the comments what you think about this hot topic for sure. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we will see you very soon. Thank you all so much. Bye.